Hi, this is Brian Kim. I want to share with you this case where I'm going to illustrate a very important concept. Some surgeons will tell me, I do the surgery the same way. I feel really good about the surgery. I see the patient post-op day 1, and sometimes they look great and I see very little corneal edema and I feel really good about my technique. And then the very next patient with the same exact lens density, same technique, same execution, same surgical time, and the patient has significant corneal edema. And so you're thinking to yourself, why do you sometimes get corneal edema even though you've done everything the same exact way? Sometimes it's clear, sometimes it's not. And so, of course, it makes common sense. It's because the corneal endothelium is not protected. Okay? And so why is that happening? Why is it that sometimes the corneal endothelium is well protected and sometimes it's not? And so I'm going to show you throughout this case and illustrating my point in how you're able to figure out if you're protecting the corneal endothelium, which will explain why you have corneal edema in some cases, even though you feel like you shouldn't. So you can see this is a rather dense lens. I'm using a corneal marker, which will help me to center and size the rhexis. This is my paracentesis incision, first on the right side and then the left side, making sure I'm parallel to the iris plane using the cotton tip to control the eye. And by making it parallel to iris plane, I get a nice corneal shelf, which will allow me to achieve a self-sealing incision. This is intracameral epinephrine, and then some intracameral air because this is a rather dense lens. And then this is some trypan blue, and I like to paint the anterior capsule surface with the trypan blue. I don't like to indiscriminately push too much dye and it end up being in the vitreous space. I don't know what that dye can do to the patient, and I certainly don't want to expose this dye to the patient's retina. And so I'm going to very gently, in using like a paint roller technique, roll the dye on the anterior capsule. And then I'm injecting the anterior chamber with dispersive viscoelastic and pushing the dye and the bubble out. And this is a triplanar corneal incision. I make a vertical groove, place the blade into the deep part of the groove, tunnel through the cornea, and then I dive down and enter. That's the triplanar corneal incision. And this is the Moria micro forceps. I'm able to puncture the center and pull down and grab the right side of the tear. The tips of these forceps are sharp, so they can function as a cystotome at the same time. Go ahead and go around circumferentially, grabbing and regrabbing. Again, these low profile rhexis forceps really give you excellent control. There's very little OVD egress, and as a result, little radialization forces with this forceps. Burping some viscoelastic out and the capsule out. And this is the capsule fornix hydrodissection technique. I place a cannula under the rhexis edge contra-incisionally, point the tip down. Oh, you see a big air bubble goes into the capsule bag. So then I sucked some of that air out, lift the lens up, a lot more bubbles come out. And unfortunately, sometimes you can get some bubbles in the cannula. I'm sweeping around and you can see the lens is beginning to spin now. And I'm going to remove some of those bubbles. But at the same time, I thought to myself, go ahead and leave those bubbles in there. And so this is the way you know. Because remember, viscoelastic and coating of the cornea is difficult to tell. Why? Because the viscoelastic is invisible. So unless you just keep pushing viscoelastic throughout the case, which is, one, it's inefficient, it's a total waste of money, it's impractical, it's really hard to know. And so the only way to know is really to have bubbles that are trapping the viscoelastic. So the way you know is making sure your viscoelastic has bubbles with it. And the bubbles are trapped in the viscoelastic. And so this is going to be my litmus test as to if I'm getting good corneal coating throughout the entire case. So I go ahead and remove the surface epinuclear material. Because this is a dense lens, I'm in dense mode. I'm sculpting a central trough. Again, you don't want a very big trough. You don't need a very long trough. I'm just going from one rhexis edge to the other, about 6 millimeters. And then this is the terminal chop. But before I do that, I'm going to rotate the lens 180 degrees apart. And I'm going to go ahead and sculpt a little bit more on the other side. Again, you don't have to go all the way down to the posterior capsule, which would be risky. I'm going bevel down and switching to quad mode, and this is the terminal chop. Place the chopper under the rhexis edge contra-incisionally, fracturing the terminal aspect of the lens. Because the terminal end is also involving the posterior lens fibers, the tear propagates all the way through, and so this really bypasses the posterior plate phenomenon. Once I've fractured the lens through and through, I perform the cross-chop maneuver, placing the chopper around the right heminucleus, hooking the peripheral lens, and I'm able to crush the lens in half. You can see that sudden loss of resistance, which indicates how dense this lens is. Fracturing that second quadrant in similar fashion, and then grabbing the lens piece up, and then using mechanical forces to crush the lens pieces into smaller pieces, and then emulsifying the lens piece. You can see that there's all these bubbles on the cornea because the bubbles are stuck within the dispersive viscoelastic. I'm intentionally leaving those bubbles there, and I'm performing the lens disassembly technique, fracturing the lens into smaller and smaller pieces, using sparing amounts of ultrasonic energy and vacuum, and keeping that port away from the cornea. Again, I'm doing this even though it's more difficult to see. Because I have confidence in my technique, I don't really care that I have bubbles in my view. I'm able to still execute the techniques, fracturing the lens into smaller and smaller pieces, performing double chop, cross chop, and then mechanical fracturing techniques. I'm able to remove those lens pieces, and you can see throughout this entire case, those bubbles have not moved. The bubbles are there from the very beginning. And again, I'm performing cross-chop maneuvers, fracturing the lens pieces into smaller pieces, and then crushing the lens pieces with mechanical fracturing forces, crushing the pieces into smaller and smaller pieces, again, without the use of ultrasonic energy or vacuum, just breaking the lens pieces under infusion pressure. And then when I'm ready, I'm able to pulse with the ultrasonic energy and vacuum, and then remove the lens pieces. Gently turning that second heminucleus in front of me. Again, you can see those big old bubbles. I'm working much lower below iris plane. And so because of that, I'm away from the cornea, and I'm able to preserve the viscoelastic and the bubbles. So think about it, guys. As I'm executing these techniques and I'm away from the corneal endothelium, and that means I'm away from the bubbles and I'm not eating the bubbles. If I'm away from the corneal endothelium and I'm not eating the bubbles, that means I'm not eating the viscoelastic. And that means the endothelium is protected by the dispersive viscoelastic. Some of you might be doing surgery, and unbeknownst to you, you're removing the dispersive viscoelastic as you're doing the lens disassembly. And if you use a lot of ultrasonic energy, which a lot of people do, they just want to do the easy thing and put their foot on the pedal and just eat up the pieces in 2 seconds. Well, guess what? You're causing a lot of ultrasonic energy to go into the eye. And if you've eaten up that viscoelastic that's protecting the cornea, well, guess what? After surgery, you're going to have a steamy cornea, and you're going to wonder why that happened. And that's because you did not protect the corneal endothelium based upon the way you do surgery. And so this case just illustrates once again on why double chop, cross chop mechanical fracturing techniques is just so good. Now, of course, you can do it other ways, and you probably get great results if you're an excellent surgeon in your own right. But the point of the matter is, if you're one of those guys that some days you have clear corneas, some days you don't, and you have a lot of edema, you really have to check your technique. Okay? Again, for those surgeons who are getting great results and doing it their own way, well, then they don't have to watch this video. But if you're one of those guys that's having corneas that are clear sometimes, and then other times you have steamy corneas, and you're really just baffled as to why you have this happen, this is why. It's because your cornea endothelium is not protected. It's not that difficult of a concept. Because the dispersive viscoelastic is invisible, it's hard to really appreciate that. So you can see here, as this case has progressed, those bubbles are still there. I mean, they're essentially the same place as they were at the beginning of the case. And so I'm able to perform mechanical fracturing, minimize ultrasonic energy, and then vacuum. Remember, ultrasonic energy is one thing if you're using a lot of energy, but remember, vacuum is the thing that if you use indiscriminately, you're removing the OVD that's coating the cornea. And so if you use a lot of vacuum, that's the other thing that can happen. And so that's very important, why I always emphasize that mechanical fracturing can be performed without ultrasonic energy as well as without the vacuum. Ultrasonic energy, again, of course, it goes without saying, can damage the cornea. But the reason why high vacuum and indiscriminate uses of vacuum is not good is you can remove the dispersive viscoelastic that's coating the corneal endothelium, and then you're undermining the safety of your surgery because you're exposing the corneal endothelium to ultrasonic damage. And then you have steamy corneas. And remember this, if you have steamy corneas, you're damaging endothelial cells, and you wonder if that's going to have any long-term ramifications to the patient, and one day they might need to have a corneal transplant, a DSAC or a DMAC, because of your surgery. So you really want to execute safe surgery whenever possible. So again, I'm polishing under the rexus edge. You already saw, already cleaned up the bag in the INA part of the case, removing the cortex from anterior to posterior, and then peeling off any remaining remnants from the bag. I'm pulsing BSS into the subincisional capsule fornix. Again, you can see those bubbles are still there. I haven't touched them. I left them there on purpose for this video. So again, I'm pushing cohesive viscoelastic to fill the bag now. And then I'm going to go ahead and polish with the sweep, polishing under the rexus edge of the lens epithelial cells. You can see the bubbles moved a little bit, and that's because as I filled the eye with the cohesive viscoelastic, it caused the bubbles to move. But those bubbles are still there. They haven't moved throughout the entire case. Widen the incision with my blade because this is a 3-piece lens. And when I put the 3-piece lens, I do have to wiggle it a little bit. And as I wiggle it, OVD will come out from the incision, which will cause the bag to collapse. So I like to use the cohesive viscoelastic cannula to hold the eye. And then I just push cohesive viscoelastic into the bag. The leading haptics going into the bag. The optics going in as well. And then I use a Maltzman to dial the trailing haptic into the bag. So again, if you have cases of corneal edema that just are flabbergasting you and just perplexing you, think about it. It means your corneal endothelium is being damaged. You're not coating the corneal endothelium well enough, or more likely you're removing the viscoelastic unbeknownst to you due to high vacuum. So I go underneath the lens, removing all the viscoelastic from within the bag. I'm going to polish underneath the rexus edge. You can see I've left all those bubbles there. Now I switch to visco mode, and now I'm removing all the viscoelastic in the anterior chamber, as well as the viscoelastic that's coating the corneal endothelium, and lo and behold, all those bubbles are gone now. And so now all the viscoelastic's gone. Now I'm actually removing the viscoelastic from the corneal endothelium because I don't need it anymore. But that means the corneal endothelium has been protected the entire time. Remember, we are the defenders of the corneal endothelium. When we do cataract surgery, we should not be the attackers of the corneal endothelium, right? We're not supposed to be attacking the corneal endothelium by damaging it with our Phaco. We should be the defenders of the corneal endothelium, and we should be coating it with dispersive viscoelastic. But not only that, we shouldn't be doing techniques that cause the viscoelastic to come out. Don't use high vacuum near the cornea. That will cause the viscoelastic to come out, and now you're not a defender of the cornea, you're the attacker of the cornea. You're damaging the corneal endothelium with the phaco energy. And so if you are curious of your techniques, you could do exactly what I did. Put some dispersive viscoelastic to coat the corneal endothelium, and then put a few bubbles in and see if you're able to retain those bubbles that are mixed with the viscoelastic. If you find yourself struggling to keep the bubbles in the eye throughout the entire case, that is an indication that you have trouble with keeping the corneal endothelium protected with viscoelastic, and this explains why you have corneal edema, even though you felt like you did a safe surgery. So I hope this was helpful to you, and I thank you for your attention.